Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about Gherkin. So let's get into it. So the question in question here was, Frederick, when in the development process should I apply Gherkin? So yeah, I think that we need to give a little bit of context on this one. I wish that BDD and Gherkin and like all of this good stuff was just a natural part of everybody's workflow because I absolutely love working with it. But that's just not the case. So let's be honest about that one. So Gherkin, guys, for those of you who don't know it, is just a text standard. It's a file standard where you express features. You express a set of features where you say something like, given that I have a user and I go to the login page and I type in my password and username, I should be able to log into the system. So it's a way for you to, it's a file format that allows you to, in a controlled manner. It's still like just plain English you're using to express this, but with some restrictions. With this format, you can express a specification, basically. It's a way for you to specify what you believe the intended, what the intended behavior is for a specific scenario and a specific feature within your system. Now, why is this useful? Well, it's useful because that allows you to sit down just as you would in every single project that you ever work on is going to have some stakeholder, some person who wants you to build something. And usually the way that you get the specification is just like a Word document or on Jira or like some card, like some free text type of thing. And they say, I kind of need this. This is the goal. This is the description and stuff like that, right? It's the same thing as this, it's just that it's done in a very structured way. Now what's powerful about this is that partly it's very well thought through because it forces you to express the steps that needs to take place in order for you to get to the definition of done. And that's basically where you have decided that if this happens, we are done with this feature. For the juniors, you may not know why this is important. For the seniors, you're probably going, this is amazing. I hope you do that because it is absolutely amazing to have a very clear definition of done, because who hasn't been there where a loose specification turns into scope creep and unforeseen things, and you haven't really thought through the flow and then you have to add things and stuff. Blarg. Anywho, so the question here is basically, when should you apply this sort of thing? And the way that I do it, and I've done this to great success, I feel myself, I've been very happy with the way we did it at my last job as well, is to start, the natural thing is, of course, you start out the story grooming process with actually specifying a Gherkin file. Like you do that together. It just has to be a high-level thing. You don't have to go into the nitty-gritty details. But you start out that way. You sit down with your team and you talk about the feature that you're going to deliver, right? And then your stakeholders have kind of given you a rough description of what they believe to be the thing that they want, right? And then you together sit down and you define the scenarios within the Gherkin file, and you say, okay, given that we have these conditions, we expect that we do this, and this, and then we expect that the result should be this. And then you kind of map that out. And what's beautiful about that is that if you're into something like subtasking or things like that, if you're using like a system like Jira, this is pretty much what you're doing. You're basically expressing tasks or things that you're creating a specification that at the same time very naturally becomes a subtask list of, okay, it should do this, so you need to do these things, and then it should be able to do this, and it should do these things, and then you kind of continue until you feel happy that you've covered all the things that are going to happen. And the knowledge sharing that your team gets from this is absolutely amazing, because if you do this as a team, you will be very certain that everybody who was part of that specification will have a very clear understanding of all the steps that are required in order to get to the definition of done. And that's exactly what you want. Like the whole goal of team communication and having knowledge sharing is so that you have the same, the goal should be to have the same mental picture of the thing that you're going to build. If you can be certain that everybody who's going to take part in developing a feature have the same code in their head, that's exactly what you want. If you have the same mental picture, everybody's aligned and things will go very smoothly. So that's one part of it. So you start out the story that way. But as we know, in reality, things always change. And because things always change, there is no value in for you to try to be like extremely precise up front. Try to get something rough, like get the things that very naturally become easy for you to answer at that moment, because you will have questions and things will change over time. So you just like do a kind of rough thing to start off with. Then you allow the person who's going to implement, or the people who's going to implement this feature, to start working. They start working, and at some point you will get to the final stage of this and things have changed, right? And then basically you do the final thing, which is where the real value of, in my opinion at least, Gherkin comes in, where you can actually write end-to-end tests based on your Gherkin files, on that specification, and that becomes a documented test basically. It's not self-documenting, but it's a documented test of that feature. And at that point, I can guarantee you that you will have had some insight, something has changed, some scope has changed or something like that. So that's where you sit down again and you have a small discussion with, you don't have to have the whole team for this, just 1 or 2 people is fine, to sit down and just review these steps before you start actually implementing before you start implementing the actual test runner that is going to run against these tests. So the basic idea is that you start your process with a rough Gherkin file so that you get a specification and you knowledge share, which is extremely useful. And then you end the feature delivery by writing these end-to-end tests, and then you actually naturally get to review it. So then you can also get a good understanding of how much the features has changed, because it will change. Almost all like larger projects or features that you're going to deliver will have some change from the initial plan. And that's why you can't just specify things up front. It doesn't make any sense. You need something rough up front, and then you go and actually implement the thing that that was created at the end of the whole thing. So what I want you to take away from this is that, at least for me, when it comes to working with BDD and Gherkin and stuff like that, starting out with writing a Gherkin file and as a team is an extremely useful thing, because you share knowledge, everybody's going to have a good understanding of the steps that are required, and it is a very useful way for you to very quickly figure out if there's some oversight or some open question or something like that, right? And then you want to end by implementing these steps that you have taken in order to actually deliver this feature, where you will very naturally see that, oh yeah, we wrote this in the beginning of this feature, but some stuff has changed, so we'll tweak it a little bit, and then you simply implement it. So start, finish is where I would apply Gherkin. It's a very efficient way of working, and it helps a lot when it comes to large-scale systems and mitigating regression problems and bugs, like pretty much for any system. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. Have a great day.